The boy sat in his wheelchair at center stage and gripped the edges of the microphone stand with both hands. Then, slowly, shaking, he pushed himself up onto his feet and stood. "The doctors said, maybe never," he said. "My dad said someday. I'm doing it for him." Jonathan Vail rose halfway out of his chair and stopped the entire show. No music. No talking. Everyone froze. For the first time in 15 seasons, he forgot he was on camera at all. Another Tuesday night. The Meridian Theater. 3,000 people packed in tight. Cameras rolling. Millions watching from home. Another hopeful contestant stepping into the light. Jonathan Vail sat behind the judge's table. Black shirt. Arms crossed. That familiar look of measured skepticism. He had seen 10,000 auditions. He expected nothing new. That was the job. Sit, watch, judge, move on. Backstage, kids ran their warm-ups, bouncing on their toes, always nerves. Vail had watched thousands do it and stopped noticing years ago. He looked at the next name on his sheet. One note beside it, from a producer. "Wheelchair, be patient." Vail sighed. He wasn't known for patience. The boy who came out rolled himself, slow and careful, in a wheelchair. Braces ran down both his legs, metal and padding, the kind that take an hour to put on. Maybe 13 years old. A pressed dress shirt, tucked in neat. Nothing flashy, nothing rehearsed. Just a boy, wheeling himself to a microphone that had been lowered to meet him. Jaw set, like he'd been rehearsing Courage as much as any song. Marcus Reyes crouched down to meet him. "Hey there, what's your name?" "Eli Carter." "How old are you, Eli?" 13, "and what are you going to sing for us tonight?" "A song my dad loved. He used to play it every Sunday." A warm murmur moved through the crowd. Vail glanced up from his notes. "Is your dad here tonight, Eli?" Marcus asked. The question landed like a stone in still water. Eli's hands tightened on the wheels. "No," he said. "He passed 2 years ago." A pause. "It was the same day this happened to me." The theater went very still. "We were in the car together," Eli said. His voice stayed level, the way a voice gets when it's told a story too many times to cry through it. Another car ran the light. My dad turned the wheel. He turned it so the other car hit his side instead of mine. He looked down at his braced legs. He saved my life. It cost him his, and I haven't walked since that day. The audience made a sound, not applause. Something quieter. A breath, held all at once. Vail set his pen down. He was listening now. Fully, the way he rarely listened to anyone. "The doctor said I might never stand again," Eli went on. "But there was a chance. A small one, if I worked hard enough. For years." He looked out at the lights he could barely see past. "So I worked. Every single day. Because my dad always said someday I'd stand back up." He put both hands on the microphone stand. "He never got to see it," Eli said. "So I'm going to do it now. In front of everyone. For him." The exact promise he'd opened with. The whole theater felt it land. Alina Cho's hand went to her mouth. David Okafor leaned forward, elbows on the desk. Priya Anand had gone completely still, watching Vail instead of the stage. And Jonathan Vail, who had not left his chair for an audition in 15 seasons, rose halfway to his feet. "Wait," he said. His voice came out rough. "Just, everybody wait." The room went silent. He needed it silent. Because Jonathan Vail had gone very pale, and he was staring at the boy like the floor had dropped out from under him. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened 15 years earlier. Jonathan Vail was not always the man behind the desk. Before the biggest shows, before his face was on billboards, he was climbing fast and traveling constantly, and the network assigned him a driver. A quiet, broad-shouldered man named Ray Carter. Ray drove him for 9 years. He wasn't just a driver, though it took Jonathan too long to see it. Ray got him to every taping on No Sleep. Ray waited outside studios until 3 in the morning without a word of complaint. Ray was the one steady, decent presence in a life that had gone loud and strange and full of people who wanted things. He never asked Jonathan for a thing, not once. "You've got a good life," Jonathan told him once, half meaning it as a question. "I've got a son," Ray said, like that was the whole answer. Because to Ray, it was. Ray talked about that boy constantly. Eli, his whole world. He kept a photo clipped to the visor. He left early exactly 1 day a year for the boy's birthday. He apologized for it every time. Jonathan would have given him 100 days if he'd asked. Ray never asked. Then one winter, Jonathan let him go. Not for cause. For image, a new manager decided a man of Jonathan's stature needed a professional security detail. A company. A fleet. Not one aging driver in a single-town car. Jonathan signed the paper without really reading it. He was busy. He told himself Ray would land fine. He didn't even say a proper goodbye. Just a handshake and a bonus and a car that came for someone else the next morning. He thought about Ray sometimes, in the years after. Not often enough. He always meant to check in. He never did. He didn't know that money got tight for Ray after that. He didn't know Ray took a job that meant longer drives, more hours on worse roads, to keep his son in a good school. He didn't know that 2 years ago, on one of those roads, another car ran a red light, and that Ray Carter turned the wheel the only direction that would save the boy in the passenger seat. He didn't know any of it. Until a lawyer, settling the estate, sent a routine letter to former employers, confirming dates of service. Jonathan read Ray's name at the bottom of a form and felt the floor tilt. He looked into it. He learned everything. The crash. The son who survived, paralyzed, the medical bills with no father's income behind them, a mother working 2 jobs and losing. Jonathan did the quiet thing he always did. He couldn't undo letting Ray go. He couldn't give the man back. But he could make sure Ray's son got every chance the doctors said was possible. He set up a trust, run through lawyers, kept far from his own name. It paid for the specialists, the surgeries, the leg braces, the rehabilitation program that ran 5 days a week. The one that told a boy there was a small chance, if he was willing to fight for years. No press, Jonathan told the lawyer. No name. The family never learns it's me. Because if they learned it was him, they might learn the rest. That the man paying the bills was the same man who let their father go for the sake of a photograph. He never met the boy. He never let himself. It was easier to write the check than to look Ray Carter's son in the eye. He thought that was the end of the story. He was wrong. He thought that was the end of the story. Until tonight. Because Jonathan Vale knew that name. Eli Carter. He had signed the checks that paid for those exact braces. He had read the boy's name on rehab reports for 2 years, alone, late at night, and never once found the nerve to visit. And now, the boy was here. On his stage. About to try to stand on legs Jonathan had quietly helped rebuild. For a father, Jonathan had failed. Jonathan Vale came around the long desk. He crossed onto the stage floor, something he'd done exactly twice before in 15 seasons. He walked slowly toward the boy in the braces and knelt down in front of the chair. "Eli," he said, "your father. Was his name Ray?" The boy's eyes went wide. "How do you know that?" "Because he worked for me," Jonathan said. "For 9 years. He drove me everywhere I ever needed to go." His voice cracked hard. He was the best man I knew. I didn't tell him that either. I have regretted it every day since. The theater had gone utterly silent. 3,000 people, not one sound. He talked about you constantly, Jonathan said. He kept your photo on his visor. You were the only thing he ever bragged about. His whole world was you. Eli's chin began to shake. The letters, he whispered, the ones that paid for my therapy. The foundation nobody could ever name. Jonathan closed his eyes for a moment. That was me, he said quietly. I couldn't bring your dad back, so I made sure you'd get every chance he'd have wanted for you. It's the smallest thing I could do, and it's nowhere near enough. Jonathan Vale did not try to hide his tears. They ran openly down the face of the man 3 seasons of contestants had nicknamed Unshakable. The judge who built his entire reputation on never once showing his hand. I let him go, Jonathan said, his voice breaking apart. For no good reason. I have spent 2 years trying to make up for a thing I can never make up for. And then tonight, you rolled onto my stage, and I couldn't breathe. Eli reached out and took the man's hand. He forgave everybody for everything, Eli said softly. It's the thing he was best at. He'd have forgiven you before you finished asking. Jonathan Vale broke completely then, and the boy, 13 years old, held the famous man's hand and let him. If a story like this one has ever moved you, share it, subscribe, so you never miss another. After a long moment, Eli wiped his own eyes and looked toward the microphone. I still want to do it, he said, standing like I promised him. Jonathan started to reach for him, to help. Eli shook his head. Gently, I have to do this part myself, he said. That was the deal. Me and my dad. Nobody answered. Nobody needed to. Jonathan stepped back. Eli set both hands on the microphone stand. He locked the braces at his knees, the way 2 years of therapists had drilled into him. He took a breath. And then he pushed. Trembling, teeth gritted, arms shaking with the whole effort of his body. Eli Carter pushed himself up out of the chair and stood. It took everything he had. His arms carried what his legs still couldn't. Sweat stood out on his forehead in the stage lights. But he was up, he was standing, and 3,000 people rose to their feet with him, silent, afraid to break the moment. The band came in soft and low, and Eli Carter sang, the song his father played every Sunday, standing on the legs his father died to save. His voice shook with effort and grief and 2 years of stubborn, daily, unglamorous work. It cracked on the first line. It steadied by the second, the way a voice does when it is keeping a promise made to someone who isn't there to hear it. He stood the whole way through, both hands locked on that stand, singing up toward lights and rafters and whatever waited past them. By the final note, there wasn't a dry eye in the building. Jonathan Vale reached out. He pressed the golden button. Without a single word, gold confetti fell over a boy standing on his own 2 feet for the first time in 2 years. Eli Carter kept working and stood a little longer each month and released a recording of his father's Sunday song the following year. Jonathan Vale started a foundation that spring, funding rehabilitation for kids injured in crashes that took a parent. This time, everyone knew whose name was on it. He named it after Ray Carter. He keeps one thing clipped to the lamp on his office desk. A photograph. A broad-shouldered man and a small boy, taken from a car visor, 15 years old and soft at the corners. Every Sunday now, Jonathan gets a short video. A boy, standing a little straighter than the week before, singing the same old song. Some men drive you where you need to go for years, and you never once say thank you. Some debts you spend the rest of your life trying and failing. and trying again to repay.